speaking ability. Does that work? Here are my notes.
Kate, be serious.
Really? I can't. It doesn't work. I tried yesterday. It was very tiring. No, I'm fine, thank you. I'm just getting a little organized. Well, I would like to thank again everyone for joining us, and people can come in. It's all right. Thai style is like that sometimes, so it's just fine. And since I'm new to you and you're all new to me, I thought I would introduce a little bit about my teacher Ajahn Tong with a translation of his teachings. And so I'll hand this around, and there, while I'm speaking, you can just look through it. There's some pictures of him, and they say that pictures say more than 1,000 words or something like that, and you might get an idea of some of what he does while I'm speaking, and then you can return it back to me. So perhaps you can start there. And today the topic was of interest, appears to be mindfulness. Is everybody here familiar with the Pali, or do you prefer if I use English? Because if I keep using the Pali, maybe some of you don't understand. And so, however, I will use some of the Buddha's language to explain some of the terminology, and I will also explain it in English. My Pali, however, is of the Thai pronunciation, and so if you're used to hearing or studying Pali, you might not understand what I'm saying until I give you the English. Otherwise, it's too difficult for me to go from the Thai Pali to the westernized Pali to the English. So basically, I would like to introduce the technique or method.
You can use also the Hebrew version.
Oh, okay, that's
1, 2,
even
3,
better.
4, right orders.
That's very nice. Thank you. Ajahn Tong is a monk of the Mahanikai order of Thai Buddhist tradition. He was ordained as a novice at the age of 11, and then a monk again at the age of 20. He currently holds the title Pratama Mangalajan. His name, Ajahn Tong, it means golden teacher. Siri Mangalo, it means highest or greatest good fortune. And so he's considered a very lucky teacher to have, because he also embodies great perfection, wisdom, and compassion. He's like Ajahn Chah. When he was a little boy, he used to dress up in his mother's sarongs and play monk. When he was maybe 3 or 4 years old, he had some visions of the Buddha, and the relatives say his body floated in the air. We cannot verify that. I think most of those relatives have passed away. However, he does demonstrate on a daily basis great love and compassion and very great purity in his behavior. In the time that I've been with him, since 1986, I've never seen him behave other than an arahant or pure monk. I've never seen him do anything in a selfish manner that a normal person would do. Everything he does is from the monk's duty. And he wakes up at about 3 in the morning, does his morning chantings, does his morning teaching of meditation to the students. Sometimes has a breakfast, sometimes he doesn't. He's usually eating 1 meal a day, which might be around 8 in the morning, and certainly during the rainy season. For the last 2 years, he's been taking 1 meal a day. And sometimes he has to wait for the lay people, so it's not like they're waiting for him always, although quite generally there are large queues of people waiting to see him. He does officiate over various kinds of duties as his high rank would require. So on the monastic level, he does openings of buildings, foundation laying stones, all kinds of funeral and other family duties, as well as the monastic teaching, Pali examinations, ordinations. But his chief focus is teaching vipassana meditation based on the 4 foundations of mindfulness, and so we call that Satipatthana Vipassana. He was trained by various masters, including the famous or great Mahasi Sayadaw of Burma, with whom he studied in about the year 1956, which would coincide with the Thai Buddhist calendar year of 2500. And so that was a year when great minds got together and discoursed the Dharma. There was a Sankhayana convocation of monks doing the Pali Tripitaka program, where they were doing recitations and questioning to collate and make sure that all the Pali Tripitakas corresponded with each other, and he was present at that time. He studied with Mahasi Sayadaw for 2 years and 7 months, it is said, and also studied Abhidhamma with a master, I believe, in Mandalay, after which he came back to Chiang Mai and established meditation teachings in his small temple, Wat Mung Mang, in the town of Chiang Mai. For another 10 or more years, he was in Wat Mung Mang, and then in 1971, he moved to what is now called Wat Rampung, to Potaram, where there's a large meditation school there running courses all year round. In 1991, he was promoted by the monastic order, and he also received an invitation to be the abbot at Wat Pratadsi Jamtong Warawihan, which in the book that's traveling around, you'll see a picture of a Buddha relic and a golden pagoda. That's anyway where he is now. That is also the seat of the Vipassana Teachers Training Center of the north of Thailand. And every year we have large groups of monks from the Mahajulalongkorn Raja Vidyalaya, the monastic university, coming to study Vipassana teacher training programs, and it's usually their master's degree program, as well as sometimes the graduates of the bachelor degree program and the Dharma missionary programs. And so it's a big center. We can host at any time hundreds of people, and in our international department we have rooms for maybe 25 to 30 people, and that's slowly expanding. So on average, we may have 15 to 20 people during the busy season and maybe 10 people during the hot season. So we have a small campus with English language facility, and sometimes with German and Spanish, and occasionally Israeli or Hebrew language assistants as well. We do have a program of training young assistants when they show that they have the aptitude for that. And so that's about where I'm from. I studied with Ajahn Tong in 1986. I began a journey. I heard the call and began the journey then, thanks to a psychic who told me that if I didn't change my path, I would end up in one of 2 places, either the police station or the morgue. And I thought, well, I better do something. I'll go to India and study meditation. It happened that I didn't know anyone in India at that time. I had a friend who was in Bangkok, and so I flew from London to Bangkok and come in, please. London to Bangkok, and she said, well, I'm going to study with Ajahn Tong. Well, do you want to come with me? So I said, sure, why not? And it was there that I realized my vocation. It took me a long time to realize that. So I'll give you the introduction of his version of the mindfulness, 4 foundations of mindfulness. You're familiar with the 4 foundations of mindfulness, I intuit here. If we study the Pali, we can see that the word sati, or mindfulness, which I'll explain a little bit more, is like a thread running through all of the Buddhist teachings. And in fact, it runs, I believe, from the beginning of his dispensation until the very end, where he reminds the monks to strive on with mindfulness. There is a Satipatthana Sutta wherein the Buddha, one of the Buddha's first thoughts after realizing the perfect self-enlightenment was ekayano ayang, ekayano mako, satanang visuttiya, soko paritewanang, tuka, I have to look it up here. Soko paritewanang samatikamaya, tuka tumanasang atangkamaya, yayasa atikamaya nipanasa sachikiriyaya, yadidanjataro satipatthana, which if we know the translation, it goes, there's this one-way path to the purification of beings, to overcome sorrow and sadness, to be free from pain and suffering, and to realize the truth, or to realize nirvana, to realize the truth and to realize nirvana, and that is the 4 foundations of mindfulness. This apparently was thought by the Buddha in his mind upon realizing the perfect self-enlightenment, and his friend Brahma Sahampati, who was in the Brahma realm, remarked that, yes, well said, well said, well said. Indeed, there is this only way to the purification of beings. And after the 49 days in the holy stations around the Bodhi tree, the Buddha then made his intention or decision to go and to teach in Sarnath. And so even though it was maybe only heard in the heavenly realm, it was one of the first dispensations in a matter of speaking. The Ajahn Tong will teach that the Buddha's Satipatthana, or foundations of mindfulness teachings, are like the pinnacle of all of the Buddha's teachings, and that in fact contain the essence of all of the 84,000 teachings of the Buddha. And so, that's fine. And so I'll repeat that first part, which goes, there's only one way, or there is this one path, or one-way path, ekayano ayang pikowe mako. There is this one-way path to the purification of beings, to overcome sorrow and sadness, to freedom from pain and suffering, to see the truth of life, or to see the true path in life, which is how Ajahn Tong translates it, and to realize nirvana or nibbana. And that is the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And what are the 4? Here, a monk, or a person who's taken themselves away from the worldly environment, lives contemplating body as body, feelings as feelings, mind as mind, and mind objects as mind objects, ardent, clearly aware, and mindful, having given up desires and sorrow for the world. And so when Ajahn Tong gives his opening talks, he will go into that with quite great detail. Here I would like to talk about 3 kinds of wisdom which normally we might not be aware of in the world. We have, if we consider the knowledge and wisdom or understanding of reality, could be divided into 3 kinds. The first is sutta maya banya, which means wisdom or knowledge which is the result of study, understanding that is learned from other people by seeing, hearing, and studying. This is something which you learned in school when we were children, or we learned from our parents when they're showing us how to do things. Our mothers taught us how to talk, how to eat, how to play, how to walk, how to dress, how to bathe. Even all of this is from seeing and hearing and doing. It's a basic kind of knowledge. The second is called Cinta Maya Banya, which is thought-based knowledge, or wisdom which is thought out and is gained through reflection. If you go to university or college, we begin to think and analyze and solve problems with the reflective functions of the mind. Even the higher reflective function of analysis and problem solving on a scientific level come from these functions. Here Ajahn Tong says that with these 2 kinds of knowledge we can make the world or we can destroy it. We can save our body and maybe save our physical life, but we can't save our mind. It's only the 3rd kind of knowledge or wisdom, bhavana1 banya, the knowledge which results from mental development, or the development of the heart, mind, as it's called in Thai, the jit jai, the knowledge gained by meditation practice. And so for our discussion, we want to look at the kinds of meditation practice. So first we're looking at knowledge or wisdom. This is wisdom from meditative insight or meditative experience. The word bahavana means mental development or meditative experience. Again, with the former two kinds of knowledge, they are worldly or conventional. It is only the third kind of knowledge which can lead to the supramundane. If we have the first two kinds of knowledge, thought-based and from seeing and hearing, we can live very well in the material plane. It is with the mental development that we can learn to live in a more spiritual life. And so we have a story of one time Ajahn Tong was receiving students, paying respect to him on the New Year's. We had a group of Western students with us, and so we brought them in to see him in an audience room where you bow and pay respect to the master. And so everyone's saying Happy New Year to him, and so he wishes everyone Happy New Year back. And he says, for a Happy New Year this year, may you all have good wisdom. And so he explains what he felt good wisdom was based on these three ideals. And then he further added a very, very, very funny equation to the problem of wisdom. He says, IQ plus EQ equals good wisdom. IQ minus EQ equals I Kwai. And in Thai, I Kwai means wisdom of the buffalo. So if we understand, I don't know where he heard that, the EQ, we could say, is basically pavanamaya banya. So when you hear emotional intelligence or the emotional IQ, the EQ, IQ meaning the thought-based, brain-based, material-based wisdom, it's good, but it's not as good as if you can put it together with the heart-based or heart development, what is now called emotional intelligence, or pavanamaya banya. This was Daniel Goleman, I believe. So IQ plus EQ equals good wisdom. This is the correct kind of wisdom. They're working together. But IQ minus EQ equals I Kwai, wisdom of the buffalo. Thai language can be quite humorous. The word I, A-Y-E, if we spelled it in English, can also mean Mr. Buffalo, or I as in intelligence of a buffalo. So there was a kind of a pun. So, regarding bhavana or mental development, when I first arrived in Thailand, people had pretty well developed EQs. They still do. Their heart mind is very developed. In fact, a lot of the language talks about heart mind. When you talk about somebody's personality, oh, he's a hot-hearted person, or he's a narrow-hearted person, or she's a kind-hearted person, or a loving-hearted person. It's an adjective, always has the word jai along with it, like cab jai, lawn jai, or jai lawn, different kinds of heart qualities. And the Thai language itself is a real right brain language, which makes it difficult for me sometimes now to speak in English. I've reached a certain process in my practice and study where it doesn't want to switch so well. I'm more than half of my life in Thailand. I think that's part of it. So I've passed the 50% mark. And almost to the year 50. Anyway, so I'm coming from the right brain. Samatha bhavana, as we know, is one kind of mental development. The word samatha means the development of calm and tranquility. Bhavana is the development of the mind in the basis of calm and tranquility. Vipassana bhavana is the development of insight. And for our purpose, or at least my purpose studying with Ajahn Tong, it was a very dry form of insight, which means insight that looks at the bare essentials of the mind and body, insight which realizes the three characteristics of impermanent, suffering, and non-self. And so with this little discussion about meditation methodology as an introduction, then I'll discuss a little bit more about mindfulness, which is what we want to get to. In the realm of meditation objects that were handed down by the Buddha, if any of you are familiar with the Visuddhimagga, we have what are called the 40 meditational devices, which begin with the 10 kasinas, the 10 asupha, the 10 anusati, the 4 apamanya, the perception of the loathsomeness of food, a reflection on 4 primary elements, and the 4 arupachanas. The previous groups of 10 kasina devices are colored or elemental devices which were designed for concentration as a samatha object. We have the earth, water, air, and fire devices. We have the blue, yellow, red, and white devices. We also have the light device and the space device as elemental qualities which were focused and concentrated on. These lead to the attainment of the 4 stages of form absorption in the form sphere, or rupachan. Then we have what are called the 10 asupa, which in the time of the Buddha you had the young monks ordaining and needing some very wholesome meditation objects, and for the purpose of really abandoning the world, corpses in various stages of decay were considered a fine object to contemplate, with the consideration that one day we might end up like that. And so these 10 stages of decay begin with the bloated, the bluish and livid, the festering, the split and cut up, the gnawed or chewed, the scattered and mangled, hacked, mutilated, bloody, worm-infested, and skeletal corpses. The purpose of this was to pull the mind away from our attachment to the body, and that would very easily access not only stages of concentration but also insight. It was a quick way to develop that. What are called the 10 reflections were more for the fair-minded person, like a householder. You have the reflections of the Buddha, reflection of the, or recollection of the Buddha, recollection of the Dhamma, recollection of the Sangha, contemplation of one's own virtue. We don't do that often enough. We should do that more often. Contemplation of one's own generosity. That's another one we need to think about, having the good deeds that we have done. That helps develop appreciation